The elevator doors opened on the 42nd floor, and I stepped into a world that wasn't meant for me. Marble floors reflected overhead lights like ice, and every surface gleamed with the kind of wealth that made my calloused hands feel suddenly obvious. I clutched the handcrafted wooden jewelry box tighter. 3 weeks of evening work, inlaid cherry wood with brass hinges I'd polished until they sang. Clara deserved something special for her promotion. The receptionist barely glanced up. "Can I help you?" "I'm here for Clara Mitchell, marketing department." "And you are?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Tom Mitchell, husband of 5 years, reduced to explaining myself to a 20-something in designer glasses. Her husband. Down the hallway, voices carried from the corner office, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Clara's laugh, bright and musical, the way it sounded when she was truly happy. But underneath it, a lower rumble. Male. Confident. I moved closer. Thanking him properly for the promotion, someone whispered behind me. I turned. A woman in a sharp burgundy suit leaned against the copy machine, eyes fixed on the corner office. Her smile was razor-thin. "Excuse me?" "Oh," she straightened, extending a manicured hand. "Amira Hassan, junior executive. You must be the husband." The way she said husband felt like being sized for a coffin. "She's with Victor," Amira continued, nodding toward the office, thanking him for the promotion. The pause before thanking lasted exactly long enough to draw blood. My grip tightened on the jewelry box. Through the glass walls, I could see them now. Clara, elegant in the black dress I'd bought her last Christmas, leaning across Victor Reeves' mahogany desk. Not the desperate lean of someone trying to be heard over office noise, the practiced lean of intimacy. Victor's hand rested on her wrist. His thumb traced small circles on her skin. I'd seen that gesture before. In our kitchen, our bedroom, our car on Sunday drives. It was Clara's favorite touch, the one that made her close her eyes and smile. Now Victor Reeves was doing it. Other employees moved through the hallway like sharks sensing blood in the water. Glances, smirks, the kind of shared knowledge that turns a workplace into a theater. I backed toward the elevator, the jewelry box suddenly feeling like evidence of my own stupidity. The doors closed on Amira's satisfied expression, and Clara's laugh, still bright, still musical, still meant for someone else. My phone buzzed as I reached the lobby. Unknown number. "If you want to know how deep this goes, meet me tonight. Pier 47, 9 p.m. Don't tell her." The rain started at 8:30, turning downtown Seattle into a neon-soaked mirror. I sat in my truck outside Pier 47, watching water stream down the windshield and wondering if I was losing my mind. The text could be from anyone. A prank. A scam. Clara herself testing me somehow. But the image of Victor's thumb on her wrist wouldn't leave me alone. At 9 sharp, a figure emerged from the shadows near the waterfront. Female, mid-30s, wearing a dark coat that made her nearly invisible against the night. She approached the passenger side and knocked. I unlocked the door. "Leah Crenshaw," she said, sliding in. "I work under Clara in marketing." She was pretty in an understated way, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. The kind of woman who remembered every slight, every broken promise, every time someone took credit for her work. "Why did you text me?" Leah pulled a manila envelope from her coat. "Because I'm tired of watching good people get screwed." Inside, hotel receipts from the Four Seasons, the W, the Fairmont Olympic. All in Victor's name, all for nights when Clara had told me she was working late or attending conferences. Credit card statements showing dinners for 2 at restaurants that would cost me a month's salary. "He's been doing this for 2 years, Leah said. "Clara's not the first, but she's the most brazen. She actually brags about having him wrapped around her finger." I studied a photograph, blurry, taken from across a hotel lobby. Clara and Victor in the elevator, her hand on his chest, his mouth near her ear. "Where did you get these?" I pay attention. Victor's sloppy when he thinks no one's watching, and Clara's gotten careless. Last month at the corporate retreat in Whistler, she spent 3 nights in his suite, told everyone she was networking with potential clients. The clients were all back in Seattle. The rain intensified, drumming against the truck's roof like impatient fingers. "What do you want from me?" Laya's smile was sharp as broken glass. "I want you to destroy them, both of them. But I need to make sure you're smart enough not to get caught." She handed me a business card. "Frank Corso, Security Consulting. He's an old friend. Tell him I sent you." I pocketed the card. "Why are you helping me?" "Because Clara Mitchell is a parasite, and Victor Reeves is a predator. Because I've watched them step on better people than themselves for too long. And because—" She paused, studying my face in the dashboard light. "Because you're not what they think you are." "What do they think I am?" "Safe, controllable, a non-threat." Laya opened the door, letting in the sound of rain and distant traffic. "Prove them wrong." Frank Corso's office occupied the third floor of a building that had seen better decades. No marble floors here, no glass walls, just functional furniture and the kind of worn professionalism that came from actually solving problems instead of talking about them. Corso himself was 50-something, with gray hair and the bearing of someone who'd spent years watching people lie to his face. He studied Laya's business card like it was a letter of introduction to a very exclusive club. "Laya says you need education, not muscle." I nodded. "My wife is having an affair with her boss. I want to expose them without going to prison." "Smart. Most guys in your position think with their fists." Corso pulled out a legal pad. "Tell me about them. Everything." For the next hour, I laid out Clara and Victor's world, the corporate structure, the social dynamics, the careful way they maintained plausible deniability. Corso took notes in precise handwriting, occasionally asking questions that cut straight to the heart of the matter. "Victor's weakness is his image," Corso said finally. "He's built his career on being the respectable family man who donates to charity and speaks at business ethics conferences. Public scandal would destroy him." "And Clara?" "Harder target. She's younger, more adaptable. But she's also more reckless. That's her weakness. She thinks she's smarter than everyone else." Corso opened a file cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. Lesson 1. Surveillance isn't about hiding in bushes with a camera. It's about pattern recognition. People are creatures of habit, especially when they're trying to maintain two different lives. Over the next 2 weeks, I learned to read body language, to spot tells, to document without being noticed. Corso taught me that the best intelligence came from people who already disliked my targets. Disgruntled employees, overlooked colleagues, anyone who felt undervalued or passed over. "Remember," Corso said during our final session, "the goal isn't just revenge, it's justice. Make sure you can tell the difference." I was starting to wonder if there was one. The Fairmont Olympics lobby buzzed with the kind of energy that came from people spending other people's money. I sat in a leather chair near the bar, hidden behind a newspaper I wasn't reading, watching the elevator bank. At 2:47 p.m., the doors opened and Clara stepped out, wearing the blue dress from our wedding photos. She looked radiant, flushed, the way she used to look when we were first married, and every day felt like a small celebration. Victor followed 30 seconds later, adjusting his tie with the satisfied expression of a man who just closed a very profitable deal. They didn't acknowledge each other in the lobby. They didn't need to. This was clearly routine, rehearsed, a dance they'd performed dozens of times. I followed Clara to the parking garage, keeping my distance, using the concrete pillars for cover the way Corso had taught me. She was humming, actually humming, as she walked to her BMW. That night, Clara came home at 7 with takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant. She kissed my cheek and talked about her day, meetings, presentations, the usual corporate theater. She mentioned having lunch with clients. She mentioned working late tomorrow. She didn't mention the Fairmont Olympic. She didn't mention the blue dress currently hanging in our closet, smelling faintly of expensive cologne. I ate pad thai and nodded at appropriate moments and planned her destruction. The rooftop gala was supposed to be invitation only, but I'd learned that confidence could open more doors than credentials. I wore my best suit, 5 years old, but well-maintained, and carried a clipboard like I belonged there. "Kitchen contractor," I told the security guard. Need to check the structural integrity of the service area before tomorrow's event. The guard barely glanced at my fake ID badge, already distracted by the sight of a senator shaking hands with a tech billionaire just inside. I stepped through as if I'd been expected all night. The 45th floor had been transformed into something from a magazine. White linens draped over round tables, crystal glasses catching the soft golden light, a string quartet's music floating like expensive perfume through the air. Outside, the floor-to-ceiling windows framed Seattle in a glittering panorama. The city sprawled out like a jewel box. Seattle's elite moved through the space like expensive fish in an aquarium, flawless on the surface, cold-eyed predators beneath. Waiters in pressed black uniforms glided between clusters of power and money, topping off champagne flutes without ever making eye contact. I positioned myself behind the bar, invisible in the way service workers always were at these events. From there, I had the perfect vantage point. I watched Clara work the room, brilliant and charming, introducing Victor to potential clients with the kind of intimate knowledge that only came from pillow talk and whispered confessions. She wore diamonds I hadn't bought her, large, ostentatious, meant to be noticed. She laughed at his jokes before he even finished them, her hand grazing his arm in a way that seemed casual to everyone else, but not to me. I knew the language of her touch. Near the windows, Victor held court with a group of investors. Sustainable growth model that prioritizes both profit and social responsibility. Bullshit, I thought, but delivered with the kind of conviction that made people write checks. The investors leaned in, nodding, completely unaware they were being charmed by a man whose private life was a rot beneath the polish. Clara appeared at Victor's elbow with a fresh drink, her fingers brushing his as she handed it over. The gesture looked casual, professional even, but I saw the deeper communication, the slight tilt of her head, the way she held his gaze a beat too long, the unspoken sentence hanging between them. They had their own language now. I could see it in the way they didn't need to speak to be understood. At 10:30, the party began winding down. I followed them to the parking garage, staying in the shadows between concrete pillars. The sound of their heels and shoes echoed in the dim light, a private duet. Clara and Victor stood beside her BMW, close enough to share breath, far enough apart to maintain deniability if anyone happened to walk by. "Can't keep doing this," Clara was saying. "Tom's getting suspicious." Victor's hands found her waist. "Then maybe it's time to stop pretending. It's not that simple. The divorce, the finances. I'll take care of everything. You know that." She leaned into him, and I watched my wife disappear into another man's arms with the kind of practiced ease that spoke of hundreds of similar moments. My phone was already recording. Eli Richardson had the kind of face that belonged on magazine covers. Sharp cheekbones, perfect teeth, eyes that promised things they had no intention of delivering. The kind of face that could talk its way into a penthouse and out of a courtroom. As Victor's operations director, he served as both gatekeeper and attack dog, the beautiful predator who did the dirty work so his boss could maintain clean hands. I'd been watching him for 3 days, learning the rhythm of his exits, the way he checked his phone before stepping into the garage, the exact second he unlocked his car. He didn't linger. He didn't look around. He assumed he owned every space he entered. It came on Thursday evening as Eli left the HQ building, heading for his Mercedes in the underground garage. His phone was still in his hand, his attention on whatever deal or tryst he was lining up for the night. Eli Richardson. He turned sharply, eyes narrowing, one hand already moving toward the panic button on his key fob. The parking garage lighting turned his tailored suit into shifting shadows. "Do I know you?" "Tom Mitchell, Clara's husband." Recognition flickered across Eli's face, followed almost instantly by amusement. Ah, the craftsman. The way he said it was surgical, clean, precise, meant to cut just deep enough to draw blood without leaving a visible scar. I stepped closer until the warm trace of his cologne hit me. Armani, same as the scent clinging to Clara's clothes on Tuesday evenings when she came home late from meetings. We need to talk. No, we don't. His smile was perfectly calibrated, half dismissal, half warning. You're punching way above your weight class here, friend. Go home. Fix something with your hands. Leave the thinking to people who know how. I moved faster than he expected, closing the distance in 2 steps, not touching him, not threatening, just there. Close enough that the rules of polite conversation started to break. The kind of proximity that made people reconsider who, exactly, was dangerous. Here's what I know, I said quietly, voice steady enough to make him lean in without realizing it. I know about the hotels, the dinners, the company credit card Victor uses to buy Clara's new jewelry. I know about Whistler, about the client meetings that never happened, about the receipts that don't match the stories. His smile faltered, the edges stiffening like ice beginning to crack. You don't know shit. I know enough. I stepped back deliberately, hands visible, tone casual. Tell your boss that the safe little husband isn't quite as safe as everyone thought. Tell him that glass houses make poor fortresses. I turned and walked away, my footsteps echoing in the empty concrete chamber. Behind me, I heard it, the quickening pace, then running footsteps pounding against the floor. I smiled without turning back, sliding into the maze of parked cars. Every shadow, every blind corner became a shield. Corso's lessons came alive in muscle memory, never in a straight line, always keep one barrier between you and the threat. Eli's shouts grew fainter, more frustrated, until they were swallowed completely by the low hum of the garage's fluorescent lights. Phase 1 complete. The coffee shop on Pine Street buzzed with the low-level energy of people conducting business that couldn't happen in offices. I sat in the corner booth, back to the wall, watching Nora Blackwood read through the folder I'd prepared. Nora ran the most influential PR firm in Seattle, the kind of operation that could make scandals disappear or create them from nothing. She had steel gray hair, predator's eyes, and a reputation for loyalty that lasted exactly as long as the retainer payments. Her client list read like a who's who of Seattle power brokers, politicians, tech executives, old money families who'd built empires on timber and shipping. Interesting, she said, closing the folder. Victor Reeves, pillar of the community, using company resources to fund an extramarital affair. Clara Mitchell, rising marketing star, sleeping her way to the corner office. She sipped her espresso with the delicate precision of someone who'd learned to appreciate expensive things. What do you want? Justice. Justice is expensive, revenge is cheaper. Which are you buying? I met her gaze. Whichever one destroys them both. Nora's smile could have cut glass. She leaned forward, studying me with the intensity of a surgeon examining a particularly challenging case. You're not what I expected, Mr. Mitchell. Most betrayed husbands who come to me are either crying or threatening violence. You're doing neither. I've moved past emotion. Have you? Or have you simply learned to weaponize it? She picked up one of the photographs, Clara and Victor in the hotel elevator, their bodies speaking a language of intimacy that needed no translation. Victor's been very good to me over the years. Lots of referrals, positive press, mutually beneficial arrangements. But, she paused, studying the image again. But reputation management is a business, and business requires trust. If Victor's judgment is compromised, if he's making decisions with his dick instead of his brain, that affects my own credibility. She named a price that made my wallet whimper, more than I'd make in 6 months of furniture commissions. I didn't flinch. How do I know you won't just take my money and warn them? Nora laughed, a sound like champagne glasses breaking. Because, Mr. Mitchell, I've already been paid to make this problem go away. Victor called me 3 days ago, nervous about rumors, wanting to know how to manage the narrative if certain information became public. He offered me a very generous retainer to keep his reputation clean. My blood chilled. You're working for him. I was working for him. Past tense. She leaned back in her chair like a chess player who'd just seen checkmate in 3 moves. But then I realized something interesting. Victor's not just cheating on his wife, he's embezzling company funds to pay for his affair. those hotel bills, those dinners, those jewelry purchases, all charged to corporate accounts under client entertainment. That's fraud, Mr. Mitchell. And fraud tends to expose itself eventually, usually in very public, very messy ways. The pieces fell into place. You're switching sides. I'm choosing the winning side. There's a charity gala next week, Children's Hospital fundraiser. Very high profile, very public, lots of cameras. Victor and his wife will be there, of course. Prominent table, photo opportunities, the full performance of marital bliss. And Clara Mitchell, his devoted protégé, will also be there. Separate table, naturally, but close enough for the cameras to catch any meaningful glances. Nora's fingers drummed against the table like a pianist warming up for a concert. I've already arranged for certain photographers to be strategically positioned. Seattle's social photographers are remarkably cooperative when properly motivated. I began to understand the scope of what she was proposing. You're going to expose them publicly. I'm going to create a situation where they expose themselves. The best scandals are the ones where people hang themselves with their own rope. She pulled out her phone and showed me a guest list. 300 of Seattle's most influential people will be in that ballroom. Business leaders, politicians, society matrons who live for gossip. When Victor and Clara reveal their true relationship, and they will, because they can't help themselves, it won't just be a scandal. It'll be the scandal. The elegance of it took my breath away. Not violence, not breaking and entering, not anything that could land me in prison. Just two people in love being encouraged to show it at exactly the wrong moment. What's your real angle here, Nora? Why burn a profitable client? Her smile turned predatory. Because Victor Reeves made the mistake of thinking he could buy my silence without buying my loyalty. He paid me to suppress a story, then tried to negotiate my fee down after the check cleared. Bad business, Mr. Mitchell. Very bad business. She slid a business card across the table. Thick stock, embossed lettering, the kind of card that opened doors in this city. Be ready to move fast when it happens. These things have momentum, and timing is everything. By Sunday morning, Victor Reeves will be unemployed and unemployable. Clara will be lucky to get hired at a strip mall travel agency. I pocketed the card, my fingers steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. What do you need from me? Just be there to watch the show, Mr. Mitchell, and, perhaps, capture some video for posterity. Nothing professional, just a concerned husband documenting his wife's career moment. Very touching, very innocent. Her laugh was ice-cold champagne, very devastating. The grand ballroom of the Fairmont Olympic had been transformed into something from a fairy tale, if fairy tales involved tax-deductible donations and carefully orchestrated photo opportunities. I stood near the service entrance, wearing a catering uniform that Nora's people had provided, watching Seattle's elite perform their annual ritual of competitive philanthropy. Victor sat at table 1 with his wife Margaret, a brittle blonde who'd learned to smile on command decades ago. He looked every inch the successful executive, confident, charitable, the kind of man who made you want to trust him with your children's college fund. Clara held court at table 7, surrounded by mid-level executives and their spouses. She wore emerald green, a color that made her skin glow under the ballroom lights. Every gesture was calculated for maximum impact, every smile designed to advance her carefully constructed image. The auction began at 8:30. A week in Tuscany, a private wine tasting, a weekend yacht charter, the kind of prizes that let rich people feel generous while buying things they already wanted. I watched through the kitchen's service window as Victor and Clara played their roles, professional colleagues, mentor and protégé, nothing more than what appearances suggested. But I'd learned to read the deeper language of betrayal, the way Clara's eyes found Victor during the speeches, the slight nod Victor gave when Clara excused herself from her table, the timing that let them meet in the hallway outside the ballroom, away from cameras but not from my careful observation. At 9:15, Clara returned to her table with slightly smeared lipstick and the glow of someone who'd just stolen something precious. At 9:17, I sent the signal. Nora's photographers had positioned themselves throughout the ballroom like snipers, waiting for the perfect shot. When Victor rose to give his keynote speech about corporate responsibility and ethical leadership, they were ready. "Believe that success means more than profit margins," Victor said, his voice carrying perfectly through the sound system. "It means building relationships based on trust, respect, and mutual benefit." The first camera flash caught Clara's face as she watched him speak, her expression soft with the kind of adoration that had nothing to do with professional admiration and everything to do with pillow talk and stolen afternoons. The second flash captured Victor's response, a smile that lingered on Clara's table just long enough to suggest intimacy. By the third flash, the whispers had started. The photographs appeared online before the guests had finished their coffee course. Seattle Business Journal, The Stranger, every gossip blog and social media account that thrived on the intersection of money and scandal. The images were carefully selected, professionally composed, and devastatingly effective. Victor gazing at Clara with unmistakable hunger, Clara's face glowing with the satisfaction of a woman in love. The two of them sharing a private moment in the hallway, bodies angled toward each other in a way that spoke of deep familiarity. The captions wrote themselves. I watched the story explode across the internet from my workshop, surrounded by the tools of my trade and the evidence boards that had consumed my life for the past month. My phone buzzed constantly, reporters, friends, people who'd suddenly remembered they knew me. I ignored them all. At 11:30 p.m., Clara finally called. "Tom, we need to talk. Something's happening at work, and I think—" She paused, and I could hear the fear creeping into her voice. "I think you're behind it." "Come home," I said quietly. "We'll talk." But Clara didn't come home. Neither did Victor. According to Laya's sources, they were holed up in his penthouse, trying to manage a crisis that had already spiraled beyond control. I smiled and went to bed alone, sleeping better than I had in months. By morning, the story had grown teeth. The Seattle Times ran a front-page exposé on corporate ethics violations. The FBI announced they were reviewing Victor's company for potential securities fraud, not related to the affair, but the scrutiny had revealed other questionable practices. Clara's promotion was quietly rescinded. Victor took a leave of absence that everyone knew was permanent. My phone rang at 6 a.m. "You son of a bitch!" Victor's voice carried the ragged edge of a man who just watched his world collapse. "You have no idea what you've done." "I know exactly what I've done. This isn't over." "Yes, it is." I hung up and made coffee, watching the sunrise paint Seattle's skyline in shades of gold and crimson. Beautiful morning for new beginnings. The knock on my door came at noon. Clara stood on my doorstep wearing yesterday's clothes and the hollow expression of someone who'd just learned that actions had consequences. Her makeup had run, her hair was disheveled, and she looked older than her 33 years. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table where we'd shared thousands of meals, planned our future, talked about children we'd never have. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. "How long have you known?" she asked finally. 2 months. "Why didn't you say anything?" I studied her face, looking for traces of the woman I'd married. She was still beautiful, still intelligent, still capable of inspiring devotion. But the person sitting across from me was a stranger wearing my wife's skin. "Because I wanted to understand who you really were," I said. "I thought I knew. I was wrong." Clara's composure cracked. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Victor and I, we don't. My voice cut through her explanation like a blade. "Don't make excuses. Don't blame circumstances. You made choices. Every day for 2 years, you chose to lie to me, to betray me, to build a life with someone else while keeping me as your safety net." Tears ran down her cheeks, but I felt nothing. The man who would have comforted her, who would have tried to understand and forgive, had died in that elevator 2 months ago. "What happens now?" she whispered. "Now you leave. Pack your things and go. The divorce papers will be ready by next week." "Tom, please." You're a stranger to me, Clara. I don't know who you are, and I don't want to learn. She stood on unsteady legs, walked to the door, then turned back one final time. I did love you, once. I met her gaze with the cold precision of a man who'd learned to weaponize his own heartbreak. I know. That's what makes this unforgivable. After she left, I sat in the kitchen for a long time, listening to the house settle around me. 5 years of marriage, reduced to the echo of footsteps on hardwood floors. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Well played. Negatival. Nora Blackwood, acknowledging a job well done. I deleted the message and returned to my workshop. I had orders to fill, deadlines to meet, a life to rebuild from the wreckage of my marriage. Outside, Seattle continued its relentless transformation, towers of glass and steel rising from the bones of what came before, beautiful and cold and ultimately temporary. Just like everything else.